Most people think getting rich feels obvious. Your salary jumps from $65,000 to $80,000. Your balance finally stays above $10,000. You expect something to feel different. But in real life, the people quietly building wealth often feel the same. They drive the same 5-year-old car. They still pack lunch 3 days a week. Their monthly spending barely moves even after a raise. That's because wealth doesn't announce itself with upgrades. It shows up as margin. An extra $1,200 left at the end of the month. 6 months of expenses sitting untouched. A calendar that isn't filled with overtime just to stay afloat. When those margins keep widening, the outcome is predictable. Stress drops, decisions slow down. Options start to appear, whether you label them as wealth or not. I'm Alex. Today we'll walk through 9 subtle signs that tend to show up before wealth feels real, starting with small daily shifts and ending with structural advantages most people never notice. The first sign catches people off guard because it doesn't feel like progress at all. It feels like money stopped interrupting your day. Sign number 1, money stops being urgent. Money stops interrupting your day. Not because you have a lot of it, but because the pressure is gone. You're not checking your account before ordering lunch. A $90 grocery run doesn't force you to reshuffle bills. A $300 car repair is annoying, not destabilizing. This shift is subtle. When money is tight, it's loud. Every purchase feels like a decision. Rent, gas, subscriptions, they all compete at the same time. You delay things, juggle dates, move balances around. The calendar becomes a financial puzzle. But when quiet wealth starts forming, the noise drops. Your paycheck lands and the plan is already set. Rent is covered. Savings move automatically. Investments happen on schedule even when the market is dull and no one is talking about it. Here's the contrast most people miss. When money is fragile, you think about it constantly. When money is stable, you barely notice it. Not because you don't care, but because you removed friction from the system. Bills stop being events, expenses stop being surprises, decisions stop feeling urgent. That calm isn't accidental. It's what happens when margin replaces stress. And if money has started fading into the background of your life, that's not complacency. That's the first quiet signal that you're moving in the right direction. Sign number 2, you feel rich in time before money. Your schedule starts changing before your bank balance does. You stop glorifying being busy. You don't rush through mornings just to get ahead. You leave a little space between meetings. You don't fill every weekend with obligations anymore. This is one of the earliest shifts. When money is tight, time feels expensive. You trade hours for dollars without thinking twice. Extra shifts, side gigs, late nights. Saying no feels risky. Rest feels irresponsible. But as your finances stabilize, time becomes visible. You notice how long things take. A 1-hour commute suddenly feels costly. Waiting on hold feels unacceptable. You start paying for convenience, not luxury. Grocery delivery, a direct flight instead of a layover, a mechanic instead of spending an entire Saturday fixing a problem. The key change isn't spending more, it's choosing differently. You protect mornings, you guard evenings, you stop stacking commitments back to back just to look productive. You say no without explaining. Here's the contrast that matters. When you're financially stressed, time controls you. When quiet wealth starts forming, you begin controlling time. You may not feel rich yet, but if you're buying back minutes, reducing urgency, and creating space in your day, that's a quiet upgrade most people never notice. Sign number 3, you have a financial buffer and you don't advertise it. You're no longer living on the edge of your next paycheck. There's money sitting in your account that doesn't have an assignment. Not for rent, not for bills, not for something urgent. It's just there. That changes how problems feel. When your car needs a $700 repair, you don't panic. You schedule it. When a medical bill shows up, you pay it and move on. You don't need to borrow time from next month to survive this one. What's interesting is what doesn't happen. You don't talk about it. You don't post screenshots. You don't signal security. From the outside, nothing looks different. But inside, everything shifts. You sleep better. You stop checking your balance every morning. You stop timing expenses down to the day. You don't dread unexpected emails with dollar signs attached. This isn't about hoarding cash. It's about control. A buffer buys you time to think instead of react. It gives you options when something breaks, changes, or disappears. Here's the contrast most people miss. Financial stress is loud and visible. Financial stability is quiet and private. And if you've built breathing room before a crisis forced you to, that's not luck. That's a clear sign you're quietly moving ahead while others are still scrambling. Sign number 4, you earn more without anyone noticing. Your income increases, but your life doesn't change much. Same apartment, same car, same routines. A raise shows up, but the spending doesn't rush to meet it. Most people do the opposite. A pay bump turns into a new car payment. A bonus turns into a vacation upgrade. Expenses rise quietly until the margin disappears again. You don't do that anymore. When your paycheck grows, the difference goes somewhere invisible. Extra money stays unclaimed. It lands in savings. It flows into investments. It widens the gap between what you earn and what you need. This is the part that feels almost boring. You don't celebrate raises with purchases. You don't announce progress with upgrades. From the outside, nothing looks different. But structurally, everything is. Here's the contrast. People chasing the appearance of wealth feel richer for a moment. People building real wealth feel almost nothing at first. That gap you're protecting matters. It absorbs inflation. It softens mistakes. It turns income into leverage instead of lifestyle. If your earnings have gone up and your expenses haven't followed, that's not restraint. That's the engine quietly doing its work while no one is watching. Sign number 5. You think in decades, not paychecks. Your decisions stretch further into the future now. You're less interested in what pays this month and more focused on what still works 10 years from now. A quick bonus matters less than a system that compounds quietly. You notice it in small choices. You invest consistently even when the market feels boring. You don't chase headlines or hot tips. You keep contributing during flat years because you understand that most growth comes from time, not timing. The same shift shows up outside investing. You build skills that don't pay immediately. You nurture relationships without asking what they return this year. You choose stability over excitement even when excitement looks tempting. Here's the contrast. Short-term thinking feels productive but fragile. Long-term thinking feels slow but durable. When people are stuck, they ask, how fast can this work? When wealth is forming, the question becomes, will this still work when conditions change? You're willing to wait. You're comfortable being early and quiet. You don't need constant feedback to stay committed. This mindset doesn't feel dramatic. There's no rush, no urgency, just steady motion in one direction. If your plans make more sense on a 10-year timeline than a 10-week one, that's not patience by accident. That's a structural shift most people never make, and it's one of the clearest signals that wealth is quietly taking root. Sign number 6, you live below your means without feeling deprived. Your spending feels calm, not tight, not restrictive, just intentional. You're not clipping coupons or obsessing over every dollar, but you're also not buying things to prove anything. You notice it in daily habits. You don't upgrade phones every year. You pause before subscriptions renew. You choose meals you enjoy, not ones designed to impress. And strangely, none of this feels like sacrifice. That's the shift. Living below your means used to sound like denial. Now it feels like clarity. You know what adds value to your life and what doesn't. The rest fades out naturally. Here's the contrast that matters. When spending is driven by image, it never feels like enough. When spending is driven by intention, it quietly shrinks. Your lifestyle costs less than you earn, not because you're forcing it to, but because you stopped chasing signals. You don't feel behind when others spend more. You don't feel pressure to keep up. That margin you've created doesn't scream progress, but it compounds. It funds savings without effort. It absorbs mistakes. It gives you the option to say no. If your life feels simpler even as your income grows, that's not minimalism for show. That's the quiet power of knowing what enough actually looks like. Sign number 7, money becomes a tool, not the score. You stop checking numbers for reassurance. Your bank balance isn't a mood indicator anymore. Net worth updates don't change how you sleep at night. Instead, money gets quieter and more practical. You start asking different questions. Not, how much did I make, but what did this buy me more time in the morning? Less stress around bills, flexibility to walk away from things that don't fit. You see it in spending choices. You'll pay for quality that lasts, not status that fades. You'll spend on convenience that saves hours, not luxury that demands upkeep. You think in terms of return, not appearance. This is where the shift becomes structural. Money isn't something you chase. It's something you assign. It funds systems. It removes friction. It protects optionality. Here's the contrast. When money is the goal, it's never enough. When money is the tool, it does its job and gets out of the way. You're not obsessed with hitting a number. You're focused on designing a life that doesn't require constant financial attention. If money feels less emotional and more mechanical, that's not indifference. That's maturity. And it's usually the final signal that wealth isn't something you're pursuing anymore. It's something that's already working for you. Sign number 8. You're harder to impress than you used to be. Opportunities don't trigger urgency anymore. When someone pitches a can't-miss idea, you don't feel pressure to act. You listen, you pause, and most of the time you walk away. This is a quiet change. Earlier on, every opportunity felt important. A faster return, a smarter shortcut, a chance to catch up. Saying no felt risky. Now the reaction is different. High returns raise questions instead of excitement. Limited time offers don't speed you up. You want to know what breaks under stress. What happens when conditions change? How it performs when no one is paying attention. You see it in everyday choices. You skip trendy investments. You ignore hype cycles. You don't jump into side projects that demand constant attention just to stay alive. Here's the contrast. When money is fragile, you need every opportunity to work. When wealth is forming, you only need a few to survive time. You're not conservative, you're selective. And that selectivity comes from margin. You can afford to wait. You can afford to miss out. Silence feels safer than action for action's sake. If you've become harder to impress, less reactive, and more patient, that's not hesitation. That's the behavior of someone who no longer needs to chase money because the system is already moving. Sign number 9, your financial decisions require less willpower than before. You don't rely on discipline the way you used to, not because you became stronger, but because the environment changed. Bills are automated. Savings happen without reminders. Investing runs on schedule. You're not constantly deciding what to do with money, because most decisions were made earlier when you had clarity. This is a quiet but critical shift. When finances are fragile, every choice requires effort. You debate purchases, you delay payments, you promise yourself to be better next month. Willpower gets drained on small, repetitive decisions. Now that pressure is gone, you don't need motivation to save. It happens. You don't need restraint to avoid overspending. The friction is built in. Even bad days don't derail the system. You see it in daily life. A surprise expense doesn't trigger a spiral. A tempting sale doesn't hijack the plan. You're not fighting yourself anymore. Here's the contrast. People who struggle financially depend on constant self-control. People quietly getting rich depend on structure. Structure beats discipline every time. If your finances keep moving in the right direction, even when you're busy, tired, or distracted, that's not luck. That's design. And once money works without demanding your attention or energy, wealth stops being something you manage daily and starts becoming something that runs in the background. Key takeaways. Quiet wealth doesn't announce itself. It shows up as fewer interruptions, slower decisions, and wider margins. Money stops demanding attention because systems replace stress. Time becomes valuable before income feels impressive. Optionality grows quietly through buffers, restraint, and patience. The common thread across every sign is control. Not control through force or hustle, but through structure. When expenses stop chasing income, when urgency fades, when opportunities lose their power to rush, wealth is already forming beneath the surface. This path rarely feels exciting. It often feels boring, even uneventful. But boring is stable. Stable compounds. And compounding given enough time becomes freedom. If parts of this felt familiar, that's not coincidence. It's pattern recognition. And once you see the pattern, you stop chasing outcomes and start protecting the conditions that quietly produce them.